friends, welcome back to the No Wrong Turns podcast with Audrey the Hickman Hunter. I am Audrey and I'm your host. I am so happy that you are here. If you like what you're listening to today, make sure that you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Every other Tuesday, we have an awesome guest come and chat about their story and their passions, and how their passions have evolved and grown throughout their story. Subscribe today to the No Wrong Turns pod with Audrey the Hickman Hunter on your podcast player so you guys will never miss an episode. Hey friends, happy Tuesday. Listeners, welcome to our MJ episode number 23. Today on the podcast, we have Eric Himes. And I must have met Eric sometime at the end of my middle school, maybe beginning of high school years at the church we both went to. Eric is definitely a couple years older and like kind of in the leadership level that was above me. And Eric was the leader of the Band of Survivors 2006 group that I have chatted about before. We've heard from several others in the group that were in the Band of Survivors group. DeAndre Coates in episode 8, Nate Irvin, episode 11, Alex Escobar, episode 13, Lindsay Bailey in episode 18. And Eric is also the son-in-law of Crochet all the way back in episode 2. In this episode today, Eric will share with us how he discovered his DIY skill set, and especially how he loves to do that with his daughter Wendy and work on projects. How he discovered his college, or decided on what his college major was. He shares about a turning point for himself in his life when he considered just driving to New York City with a tank of gas and $900 to his name instead of going on a missions trip. Eric shares about several various musical chapters and moments throughout his story. He shares about how he persevered through life's no's that he went through, and how in his Russian class he found it to be the easiest ever. Yes, that's right, Russian. What life was like post-college, how he fought to find the beauty and the purpose in the real adult world, and how God gave Eric some passions of teaching guitar lessons and leading a dodgeball night at his church and starting a band. He goes on to talk about his time in leading youth ministry, young adult ministry, and diving deep into talking about the motivations behind your passions, the who or the what that is validating your passions. You are for sure going to want to lean in and not miss hearing Eric's story in pursuing the things he's passionate about through his different creative outlets, such as praise band and ministry leadership position with young adults. No matter if this is your story and you can relate to him or not, I believe that there is something in this episode for you. All right, here's my conversation with Eric. Welcome to the No Wrong Turns podcast. Today on the podcast, I have Eric Himes here live in person. So Eric, thanks for letting me come and interview you.
Thanks for coming out in the quarantine. Appreciate it.
In the Corona times.
Crazy times, yeah.
Well said. Eric, can you introduce yourself to the listeners, like who you are, a little bit about yourself so we can get to know you, and maybe some fun facts?
Sure. Hello, I'm Eric Himes, and I live in Wheaton, Illinois with my lovely wife, Kathleen, and my wife of almost 15 years, and I'm making sure I'm doing the math right on that, and our 7.5-year-old daughter, Wendy, almost 8 in May. And fun facts, when I was trying to fill out the form for this podcast, I had two things that were fun. One is that I love DIY projects, which isn't really fun. It's more like basic suburban male activities. And then the second one, I was trying to talk my wife into getting a dog, which we did get, a little puppy named Atticus, a little Pomsky, a Pomeranian Husky mix. And I never thought we'd get a dog. And then this fall, I just became obsessed with getting a dog, and then finally wore her down and we got a dog. And now I'm just regretting that pursuit. at the moment because it's just a puppy and it's just obnoxious. But yeah, so I'm a dog owner with regrets, basically.
You said you like to do DIY projects. What was your favorite one that you've done so far?
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah, so this is our second house that we live in now. We had like a fixer-upper in Hinsdale, where my wife is from. We bought the worst house in the whole city, which is it's like a really nice town, like really uppity. And we bought like the worst house there, foreclosure, raccoons in the attic, and I didn't know, and like all sorts of things wrong with the house, and I didn't know how to do anything project-wise, and I had no ambition to learn anything either. And then we got this house in the middle of the recession. We were underwater in a condo that we bought, and then learned that my wife was expecting our daughter, and I just became a madman and like realized that this house is not suitable for human beings to inhabit. So became really quickly like obsessive compulsive about improving things and learning how to do that. So that was probably my biggest, just that house in general, bringing this like totally dead thing back to life and learning along the way, making tons of mistakes. And it's like every little project, I didn't know how to do it until I finished it. And then it was like, oh, that's how you do that. I could now do that well. But then it's like too late. Why would you go back and do it? But so I don't know. We had this terrible attic in the last house, and I just decided I wanted to oh, that's our dog, Atticus, sorry, podcast. I decided I wanted to finish it and make it inhabitable for our daughter to play up in and like to use as storage. And thinking back now, it's still totally unsafe. There's like nails coming through the, the ceiling and stuff, and just dangerous. But like, it was a yellow house, and that's our daughter, Wendy had never been up to this attic. And I finished it. I was working up there for a week, maybe 2 weeks. And then I was finally going to show her, and I had redid the floorboards and the lighting and the storage and put down planks of wood and all this kind of stuff. And I showed her this like secret staircase she had not known her entire life. She's 5 years old at this time, and bring her up to this attic, and she saw this room that she'd never seen for her whole life. And she turns to me and she says, "I love our yellow house." Just like, there's surprises everywhere, and this is crazy that this has always existed. So yeah, those type of things. I try to do a lot of projects with her or for her, just in terms of like memory building, and like we've done playhouses, and she built a game for her seventh birthday called the Wendy toss, which is like a Bago set basically with 7 holes in it, and we built that together. But I love that kind of stuff. Anything we can do together and experience together, those are my favorite kind of projects.
Awesome. Give us a little bit about where you are now, but can you kind of give us a little bit of background about where you grew up and how you grew up, maybe elementary, middle, high school age a little bit?
Yeah, so I grew up in Oak Park, Illinois, so suburb of Chicago, and had a good childhood, just kind of normal. I was just kind of a nerdy kid in my own world, and I have an older sister named Tammy. She's 4 years older, and we grew up there. I had a pretty good elementary school life. Then when I was, 9 years old, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. My mom was an awesome, just loving, nurturing, kind of the glue to not just our family, but to our church and to kind of our social sphere. And then she went through chemo and fought back, and we had 4 years. And then when I was 12, she was diagnosed again with cancer, and it was terminal. So I lost her when I was 12, and that was a huge trauma and a very numb season, where it's like I honestly don't even really remember a lot of those years or even going through school or anything like that. Yeah. And then when I was in freshman in high school, my dad decided to move us closer to family, so we moved a little bit closer to another suburb called Elmhurst that I knew. Just a few people from church went to that high school, and I was like just wanted to be in the background and not noticed at all, and just very, very shy and quiet and very broken. And yeah, those were just kind of strange years. They're hard years anyway for anyone, really. Yeah. And then sophomore year, I met a kid named Matt Rohn, who became my best friend, and he just kind of helped me like navigate through some things, especially socially.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a good Catholic boy who understood the world of faith and kind of encouraged me to like have a bigger sphere of friends and interests. And yeah, he became my best friend, and we were in a math class together. We were the two worst students, and we decided to study together, which is just like not what you want. You want to be studying with someone smarter than you so that you can be improving. But somehow, I don't even know, got through algebra together, just terrible at math. And yeah, Matt helped me grow a lot. And then I just became insane. Like the pendulum swung completely other way and became more of an extrovert and started becoming super active in anything in high school. And by senior year, it was like anything I could possibly be a part of, I was trying to do. And I was sneaking into yearbook photos of like every single club. And I actually snuck into, this is probably my crowning achievement of high school, I snuck into the faculty photo.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It was, I was very proud of it. And they actually blew it up and put it in the hallway, and no one noticed that I was like in the photo. This like obnoxious teenager. And then they saw it, and they took it down, and they took a Sharpie and colored me out.
My gosh.
But it made it into the yearbook itself, so I'm very proud of that. And then I went crazy and like decided that I wanted to be in a musical, which is absurd because I'd never like sung publicly. Or even I grew up in church and still attend church, but like, that was not a pursuit I was ever interested in. So like I joined a musical, and then one of my friends was like, "Hey, I'm starting a band, and I want you to be our singer."
Oh, wow.
And so in high school, like senior year, became a singer for a band called the Audio Projects, which probably exists somewhere online, but I wouldn't really recommend listening to it. And then got into that scene a little bit and really enjoyed that. I was like, this is cool, like expressing yourself and writing songs and whatever. And then all my high school friends, we went to the same college. We went to DePaul University. Like 8 of us went together in mass, and a lot of us lived together.
Oh, wait, pause. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
So when you were you always planning on going to college, or were you thinking, did you know you wanted to do that?
I think so. I feel like it was more like expected,
Mm-hmm.
in my family. Like my mom and dad were both teachers and, educated. And it was just, I had no other ambition. I had no other skill set other
Mm-hmm.
than I was only really good at writing in high school. And that was basically it. And music stuff. I was
Mm-hmm.
in band and grew up playing brass instruments and stuff, but that wasn't going to be a career for me. So yeah, I went to DePaul University where my sister went, which made it easy. I only applied to a few schools. Mm-hmm. And I'd visited there, and Lincoln Park is amazing. And just being able to live there and be with my friends and kind of coast academically.
Yeah.
I was an English major. That was just really easy.
So when you're an English major, what does that mean? You're just taking classes on literature? Or?
Yeah, honestly, that's another kind of blur. The academic part of that is kind of a blur. I guess they exposed me to some things that I wouldn't have found on my own, but it was just not difficult. So I feel like maybe it was a scam, the education system or whatever. I'm grateful for it, but there's definitely like an educational prosperity gospel type thing that we kind of live. It's like, if you are educated enough, then you will succeed. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just like a kind of foregone conclusion. And education is an important piece to break out of systems of poverty and stuff, but I've really lived a life of privilege. So I don't know, it wasn't like a big deal, which sounds so entitled, and it's because it definitely was. Mm-hmm. Anyway, and it was just, getting to your question, sorry. Yeah, I guess it was just reading stories and then writing about them or creating your own things. And freshman year, I had a great professor who exposed me to some writers, some authors that I just really became like, oh yeah, creative writing. That's really what would be cool to do. In high school, mm-hmm. I got into advertising. I'm like, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to be in advertising because I like being creative. I like coming up with clever things. And then English became one of the avenue for that. I thought I would go into advertising with an English degree, go into copywriting or something like that. And then just things changed. My life changed experientially, and just like, I don't know if I'm skipping ahead too much, but like a lot of it was, a lot of the high school years and the college years were like, this is me. I'm building my life for me.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Are we still in college?
Sure. So you were working on getting your English degree, and when you were exiting college, what was your next step, or what were you going to do?
Yeah, so I definitely shifted in college, where it was like, I went on a missions trip to Ukraine. This is the summer after freshman year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really lost at that point too. I was in a bad relationship, and I kind of like, I'm a Christian, and I was really kind of walking away from my faith, making deliberate steps to lessen that, the importance in my life of faith and my walk with Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I was really lost, and I was definitely a pivotal moment where we're about to go on this trip to Ukraine, and I'm just lost and broken. And I thought, we were about to leave, and the night before, I'm like in my car, I'm like, I have a full tank of gas, I have $900 in my bank account. I'm just going to leave and not tell anyone, and drop out of college and go move to New York and get a job somewhere, and then become a writer, like a tortured artist type, trope, basically. With
your $900 and a tank of gas.
Yeah. I was just like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. I'm so lost at this point. And then I don't know, really. I mean, the grace of God is the answer, but I don't know how logistically it worked out. But I was on the plane the next day, and just so depressed and sad and just lost. And I slept the entire trip. I remember just being exhausted. Mm-hmm. And even these people that I'm on this trip with, they don't even know who I am at this point. And they're like, what's his deal? He has not been awake a moment. He's not even talking to us, type of deal. And then God really transformed me in that summer, and got a hold of my heart, and took out a lot of that garbage and junk and bitterness and confusion, and then started to... Sorry, Atticus. Then he started to pour in new things that I never expected. So then he brought back this musical thing, and then I'd only ever sang in this band, and then one of the people on the teams is like, we need someone to play guitar. It's going to be you. So
did you know how to play guitar at that point?
No, I had no idea. No, so in preparation for that, I started playing guitar. And then any free moment I had on that trip, I was just playing guitar constantly and singing and playing hymns, basically, primarily hymns of the church. And then it was, God was inspiring songs and calling me into leading people in sung worship. So then God was inspiring songwriting, which was just terrible, at first, and like playing guitar, which was terrible, and singing, which was terrible. And
because you're kind of new to both of those.
Just new to all of it. And that's the thing, looking back in my life now, there's not actually that many natural gifts that I have. There's only passion and then determination. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not like a great singer. I'm not a good guitar player or whatever. I guess if there's anything natural, would be leadership is kind of the theme. Mm-hmm. But even then, there's a lot of blind spots, a lot of things where I'm like, not good at. And that's what I say to people that I work with. I lead a praise band, and I've been doing this forever now. And God keeps surrounding me with people who are more natural at things, which is just amazingly awesome. I always say to them, when we get to heaven, I want God to show what I did with the 10% mm-hmm. gift he gave me. I hope that I've honored that. But I was never given here's the amazing thing. Here's the exceptional thing. But it's more, man, this guy is stubborn and willing to just not care about no's and stuff. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of cultural things that have been told along the way in my denomination where it's just like, these are no's. These are hard no's. And it's like, I'm just not going to listen to that, basically. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's kind of a rambling way of explaining. So God was pouring into these new passions and just giving me just a will, a determination, like, wow, I want to be a worship leader now. And that looks like me going to my room and playing guitar forever and singing to no one and learning how to do that. And God has been really good to me in terms of honoring these things, and probably jumping ahead, but you're talking about what advice would you give to people, later? And one of them is just time is actually your friend if you're willing to just ride it out and be faithful and show up. A lot of good can come from that.
So you're saying in deciding, I'm interested in songwriting, I'm interested in playing guitar and singing, but the time of practicing that or something else?
Yeah, I think it's kind of everything. For example, so I want to be a worship leader, but my church is very traditional. We have a brass band and choir, and that's a big part of our culture. The Salvation Army is my denomination, for those of you who don't know at home. And a lot of people don't know the Salvation Army is a church, but it is. And a lot of our culture is this kind of Victorian England model of taking the modern things of the day and turning it on their head and using it for good. And a part of that culture, brass bands are a big deal, and they still are in the Salvation Army culture today. And a choir, we call them songsters for those at home. But anyway, all that to say, like, basically a Christian rock band wasn't really a thing in that culture. And so trying to break into that culture within my church was kind of difficult to say, no, we're going to have drums and it's going to be loud, or we're going to try to feel things instead of just, not that you don't feel things listening to a brass band, but it's just different.
Yeah.
And so the pastors and stuff that I would be like, hey, we want to do a praise band. They're like, okay, you get one song once a month. That's kind of discouraging when you have this big idea in your mind. But God was really faithful. Like, yeah, show up, one song once a month, make it good.
Yeah.
And then it was, you can get 2 songs once a month. Okay. And then now looking at our church now, praise band's on every week. And that wasn't ever really the point, but glorifying God is the point. But it's just cool that now that is a part of our culture now. And there are teenagers and younger people learning how to play guitar and drums and sing, more modern songs and express themselves in that way. But all that saying, time is your friend. A lot of times you want instant results, which I do too. I'd love for instant results to happen. But you're going to spend your life seeking after these things and being faithful to them and being faithful to the calling that God has put in your life. And you have a lot of time to do that, actually. But just be faithful and show up and be reliable and be determined and be stubborn. And God can use that. He really can. Now looking back now, it's like, wow, he really did a lot of stuff here that I didn't think would ever happen. If you were to ask, would you see this or see that? And yet we see progress is slow, but it definitely does happen. Things do change. And you learn things along the way, which you didn't think were going to be there. And it's really awesome. Like, because it's God's idea, right? Yeah. I used to get really lost in that. This is me. I'm trying to do this thing in my strength. That's not it at all. If God has called you to something and wants you to do something with your life, he's going to use you or not use you. But if you show up and you surrender to him, he really will use you. And it's a mystery, honestly. It's awesome. Sorry, that's a tangent. Sorry, a really long tangent.
No problem. So I want to just pivot a little bit and go a little bit back in your story.
Yeah.
To then go forward. So after your trip to the Ukraine, a lot of your, I guess, lens or life shifted, or like how you saw the world, would you say?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
So moving forward, that was, you said, your freshman year of college. So then moving forward, did that change kind of how you pursued your college career or thought about life after?
So yeah, then after that trip, I thought the target was then being a missionary in Eastern Europe.
Okay.
In Russia, basically, which I know Ukraine's not Russia, but I thought, okay, well, I don't know what is the next step, but I think learning Russian would be helpful to that. So I did 3 years of Russian in college.
Oh, can you say something for us?
No, this is terrible. This is terrible. And then it was just the easiest class ever, which is crazy. I'm like,
Russian was the easiest class ever?
Well, don't get me wrong. I can't speak any Russian, really. And I can't understand Russian either, but I had the easiest teacher ever.
Oh, okay.
And she was really loving, and she knew that I was basically an idiot. And she was just like, if you want to come today, you can,
wow.
Try to read this if you can. That's what I'm saying. Like, maybe college is a scam because somehow this lady was employed by this university, never really graded me, and I just got A's for 3 years.
What?
Yes, exactly. And I don't know, it's just strange. And then there are kids in that, were kids in that class that their families are Russian and they just spoke Russian. You know?
Okay. So there's a clear discrepancy in the skill level coming in.
Exactly. So they knew how to read and write, and they were also there for the easy A. And the teacher didn't want to, I don't know what her deal was, honestly. And I don't know why I kept taking it because...
Yeah, 3 years. That's a long time.
It was just an elective, I guess. And it was just very easy. And I wrote a song in Russian. I adapted a song or a poem about kittens or something. And I just played it for the teacher, and she was just like, "You got an A. You're good." I'm like, that cost me nothing, you know? Anyway, that's not an interesting story other than I thought this will be a part of my future. And then this is the terrible thing. I've never been back to Ukraine or Eastern Europe or Russia.
Hey listeners, this week our sponsor is Taylor Rambo and her new book, Reckless Grace, A Journey to Bold Forgiveness. Taylor Rambo is a future guest of the podcast. Taylor's from Texas. She's a wife and a mama. She designs and blogs over at tayrambo.com. She is a creator of the brand Better Not Perfect and the host/developer of the podcast Better Not Perfect. In Taylor's future episode on the podcast, Taylor will let us know about her desire to encourage and inspire others throughout the idea of not seeking perfection, but rather striving to be better. In Taylor's new book, Reckless Grace, she shares her journey to forgiveness as she talks about her story of enduring abuse, broken relationships, and her walk with God. This book is filled with many moments and emotions of laughter and tears and heartache. I love how when you read Taylor's story, it literally feels like she's talking right to you, like she's writing to a close friend. Reckless Grace is a story that is an emotional and redemptive journey that will encourage and inspire you to step into the grace that you are called to live in. Reckless Grace will lead you to living a life of perseverance, compassion, love, ridiculous grace, and boldness so that you can live your purpose. You can find out more and follow Taylor over on her Instagram at @Tay_Rambo. That is at THETAYLOR_RAMBO. And over on her website, you can find all the links to purchase and learn more about her new book, Reckless Grace, A Journey to Bold Forgiveness, at www.tayrambo.com. That is www.tayrambo.com. All right, back to Eric's story.
I was really into it. I had a Ukraine map on my wall. And I would pray earnestly for cities in Ukraine, put a little pin in the wall. And I prayed for Donetsk today. I prayed for these things. And it's kind of odd now because I felt like that was the target. And now looking back, it's like that wasn't the target. But it was an important part of my journey or whatever. Sorry.
No,
Are you
okay? Yeah.
So then I don't know where we are now in the story.
So you are finishing college, your world lens, I guess, life goals kind of maybe have shifted a little bit, and you're getting through Russian, making songs about cats.
Yeah.
Which
thank
sad
you.
we can't hear about that. I mean, hear you sing about that. So then when you were getting to the end of college, what was going to happen next for you, or what were your thoughts as you're ending college?
So then every summer I went on a different mission trip, basically, too. And that was very helpful as well. I just kept growing in leadership, I guess, is the theme, I would say, looking back. And I went to Australia the next summer. And then I did a summer at one of our Salvation Army camps. And then I was like, wait, this is way harder than the mission trip. I'm going to go back on the mission trip. And then I went to Germany and Lithuania senior year, and then this is an important part of that. While I was in Australia, so I talked about Kathleen, how we've been married, and all this kind of stuff. We grew up in church together. I've known her my whole life, literally my whole life, and we were kind of on again, off again, just like the terrible couple in the youth group that just tortures everyone with their drama.
Those people.
Exactly, yeah. And so throughout high school and stuff, we kind of dated, and she was either the love of my life or my greatest enemy. And I would just like torture her, and her dad sat me down like, you cannot be this mean to my child, which now as a father, like I totally get, and I would totally do that. And anyway, so while I was away the second summer, actually, while I was in Ukraine, God kind of said, hey, Kathleen, like, this is the person. And I was like, no, I'm not going to say anything. I can't trust myself in relationships. And I was really good. And like for like 4 months after I returned home, I didn't say anything. And then I did. I totally jumped the gun and told her like,
oh, wow.
Hey, I was thinking about you and now I'm ready to date. And she's just like, I'm not at all interested in you. She actually said this. She said, I'm actually not, it's not just I'm not interested, but I'm not at all attracted to you.
Oh, wow.
Just really defined it. And then I was like, okay, this sucks. And then she's like, wait, I'm not done. And she's like, well, can you imagine every day waking up and turning over and looking at your spouse and just not being attracted to them? And I was like, no, I've kind of heard enough, like I don't need to like hear anymore. And she's like, can you imagine it? And I was like, I can't imagine it because I think you're the most beautiful person.
Did you say that out loud or in your head?
In my head. I was like, I get how you think I'm, disgusting, basically repulsive. And my mentor at the time, a great guy named Ed, we were at a church retreat, and he's like, did you talk to her? I saw you talking to you. I thought you weren't going to talk to her. And I was like, yeah, I just decided it was time to talk to her about this. And he's like, well, how'd it go? And I'm like, not good, Ed. Like, not good at all. She totally flatly rejected me. And so I was totally hurt by that. And then I was like, you know what, God, I clearly jumped the gun. I shouldn't have said any of that. I wasn't ready. I'm not ready. I'm just going to let go of this. And then I went away to Australia the next summer. And you're not supposed to date on these things, but I totally found a girlfriend in Australia, which is not good. And then Kathleen went to Haiti, which was super transformative for her. She had a great time, and she knows French and everything. And it was awesome. And then as soon as our teams came back from these trips, I saw her and my heart sank. It was like, oh gosh, I just made a terrible decision. Like we hadn't even talked about it. And then that night she sat me down. She's like, hey, God revealed you to me and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, hey, I've been waiting forever to hear this, but I have an Australian girlfriend and I'm sorry, whatever. So anyway, and she was really cool about it. And she's like, hey, well, that's not what I was expecting, and we don't have to talk about this anymore. But if something changes, then we'll talk. But if not, then just let's pretend we're cool, basically. And I was like, okay. But I knew that I needed to get out of that relationship as quickly
Australia wasn't going to last.
Australia was not going to last. And she's such a nice lady. I feel bad. But, very much like Ukraine, I've never seen this girl again. And moved on from that. And then, a few months later, I'm sitting down with Kathleen's parents and saying, hey, remember me? I've been that terrible person that's tortured your daughter, but I love her and I want to be with her and I want to date her and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I understand that you'd be skeptical. I would be too, but please, could I date your daughter? I guess I didn't say I love her in that first thing, but
that would have been a bit of a bombshell.
It would have been. And they were really good about it and very sweet and loving. And they're like, yes, you can try to date her,
You can try.
But then we started dating, and then it was like, this is the girl for me. And then, then I graduated. And she was a year behind me, and then she graduated, and then we got married that summer after she graduated. Yeah, I don't know what's next.
So so you guys got married, and fun fact, I was actually there. I remember I was wearing a horrendous Old Navy blue hibiscus flower dress. It was very obnoxious.
Awesome.
That's the biggest thing I remember because I've seen photos of it since this day. But yes. I'm
glad you brought it up. We were wondering if you felt bad about that.
There's a lot of other guests, so I'm sure you do not remember. So after you guys got married, where did you guys kind of settle down as your first home? Were you guys working? Did you want to pursue other schooling after, since it was so, easy for you?
When I say it's easy, that's not like a brag. It's like, it can only sound like a brag now.
I was just joshing you.
Okay. I just picked the easiest thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I just coasted. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Well, it sounded like you were already a little bit gifted in the writing department anyway, or no?
I mean, like, I don't know. I don't think I'm a great writer or something. I just think it was almost like I can see how people can engineer a phrase or a paper or a paragraph or whatever to get an A. I can see how they would do it. And then once I learned that, it was like, I'm not actually learning anything.
You just cracked the code for that.
The code, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so what did we do? I had a terrible job. Sorry. I had a job that's a terrible fit for me. It's probably a good job for someone.
Yeah.
And I was a secretary for the Salvation Army at our headquarters in the legal department. So I was just showing up every morning and pulling files and stuff and processing estates and bring-ups and stuff and scanning documents. People leave the Salvation Army money and stuff, which is really awesome because they want to support it. And I was just basically like getting people files and clerical stuff. I really need creative things to keep me stimulated, alive. And this was like the total opposite of that. And that was the next part of my journey. And just like everyone who's trying to figure out what's next, those phases are really miserable and difficult. So I hated that. I was depressed and it was like flying high. College was cool with all my friends, and then every day was something creative or fun or funny or memorable. And then it's just like, wow, this is the most boring thing. Just like the bubbles burst. It has to happen. That's super important on people's journey. The real world is beautiful, but it looks different. And you have to fight to find the beauty and find your place and all that kind of stuff. And the real world is expecting something from you. And sometimes that thing that they're expecting is just shutting up and doing the thing that sucks. You know, like.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
Definitely. Yeah. So I did that for a while and I was just so miserable. And then my grandpa sat me down. My grandpa's he passed away this past year, and he was a really great man. He was a pastor. Him and my grandma were pastors in the Salvation Army. And he just was like, tell me about this job. And I've heard that you're not happy and all this kind of stuff. And I'm giving all these reasons or whatever. And he's just like, yeah, you need to just drop that. You need to stop complaining, and you need to figure it out.
Wow.
And he said it in a nice way, but it's still like, and I was like so mad at him for saying that, honestly. But he's like, you just trust God, and your job is not who you are. So find other things that you like doing and then do that. So I started a beginner guitar class at this office on Wednesdays. And again, not like a gifted guitar player, or I don't even think a gifted teacher really, but I was like, I like guitar, and it'd be a fun excuse to love people. And so we had this ragtag guitar class, and we performed at our Christmas party and stuff.
That's great.
And it was so bad. They didn't practice at all. They would never practice.
Just for your half hour.
Just for the half
lesson.
hour, they thought they'd get better, and they never got better, too. Then I started doing a dodgeball ministry at my church. I did dodgeball throughout college. It was a big part of what I did. It still exists, the DePaul Dodgeball Society. I'm really proud of that. I mean, my high school friends built that.
Legacy, yeah.
Super important. I also thought at the time dodgeball was popping off, and the movie came out, because I'm old, so the movie's old. And I remember looking at my friends and like, hey, this dodgeball thing, this could be our life. Like,
wow.
I'm like, we could drop out and just see where this goes. See if we could like go from school to school and build like a collegiate dodgeball association. And they're like, yeah, no. I'm like, and I was like, okay, you're right. Whatever. So anyway, then I brought that to church, and I was like, well, let's see what happens. We started with 8 kids playing dodgeball, just church kids. And we looked at each other and was like, this is exhausting. 8 people running around. This isn't even fun. You need a lot of people for dodgeball to be good. And then I was like, if we're going to do this next week, everyone has to bring a friend. That's the rule, or else we're not going to do it. And then the next week, everyone brought a friend. And then somehow we unlocked this social group of people. And then, this is not really an exaggeration, 60, 70, 80, 100 kids would come to play, high school kids. And that became I still kept going to church, but that became my ministry. And it was the dodgeball church, basically. And so that was a big part of that, too. So, like, God gave me dodgeball, and I brought it to church, and that was like a big thing. So the guitar stuff or whatever. And then I started this praise band, the singing company, which I'm still involved in and still love. And so when I stopped focusing on the career, which wasn't really going anywhere, and was just like, let's pour into your passions and let's follow those, even if at the end of the day it's not a bigger paycheck, or it's not a paycheck at all. These are just honoring your passions and giving them space to grow. Then God unlocked the professional ministry thing. And Kathleen and I really quickly had 3 job offers in totally random things.
Oh, wow.
That were actually creative and ministerial, which is something I was looking for in ministry. And then I was discipled by a guy named Josh Polanco and got a job for the Salvation Army in Chicago, and then fell into youth ministry, which is where I've been ever since, basically.
Awesome. So would you say that you're, from the different passions, I could hear you're passionate about having creative outlets and using them, dodgeball. And did I miss another one?
Just praise band stuff, I guess.
Praise band, yes. Yeah. So you're in youth ministry, young adult ministry now, and I would say that's probably a passion of yours. Yeah. Sure. So with all of your passions, do you have any myths or anything that you've heard maybe about, I mean, you have a lot of passions, so if you would just want to pick a couple of any myths that you've heard many times that you thought, oh, this isn't true, but people keep saying this about this passion?
I think the journey on following your passions, I think, is who are you waiting to validate your passion? How are you measuring it? For me, I would always, I'm very actually predictable in my struggles. Part of my journey is, why am I waiting for this person up here, higher up, to see and value the thing that I'm pursuing? And it's like, I would say, specifically in ministry stuff in the church, if you spend your time trying to be validated from your leaders or whatever, you're going to miss the actual point. If God is inspiring something to reach people, then it's the people who need to measure if that passion matters, if that makes sense. So these kids that came through Dodgeball and stuff, if I was waiting for even the amazing people in my church to get on board and pour into that ministry, which that did happen, which is great. But if I was waiting for those things to be seen, then I would have just wasted a ton of time, and I wouldn't have actually reached those kids. That's the beautiful thing. These kids are like, this is my church. This is the Dodgeball church. They would call me their priest. I would hear them say, who's that? Oh, that's my priest. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm actually not a ordained minister. I'm not Catholic or whatever. But that's when it's like, oh yeah, this is for them. So we're building, God is using this passion. He's inspiring this thing. And then I'm working with God and the Holy Spirit to build this thing. So I guess it's just who are you waiting to validate your thing? And if you're looking at the wrong thing, you're going to just waste a ton of time, and you're going to be hurt a lot because you're measuring the thing in the wrong way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's really good, especially when you were saying that. It just kind of reminds me of, especially now in the terms of social media and likes and shares and all of that. When you do something and you're like, okay, I 100 people like this or 300 people like this, and then when it reaches that whatever certain number, then it's you consider it validated,
right,
and a success. But not if you did something and you feel like this is a good thing, this is what God wants me to do, this is the creative outlet I should be pursuing.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Okay, so next question. I'm going to pivot a little bit to ask a little bit about guidance. You mentioned a little bit earlier some advice about guidance, but I just wondered if you had it for any of your passions, if somebody's here and they're like, you know what, actually, I really am resonating with this. I've wanted to do this creative thing, and I've been waiting for people to ask me, but now I feel like I could be empowered to do something on my own. What would you, or for songwriting or for any of those kind of passions you're talking about, what would you kind of recommend if somebody's like, you know what, I should take the next step? What would you recommend them to do?
I would say something like, try to figure out where your thing can be useful. And sorry, I'm going to get off topic, but when I felt like the thing was worship and songwriting and stuff, the temptation is gotta be on the stage. I gotta get as much time and as much opportunity on the stage. And then many people struggle with that, myself included. It's just get me to the extraordinary thing.
Yeah.
Like, let's skip all these steps along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just my recommendation is don't fall for that lie either. Figure out where you can be useful with it. So like, I probably shouldn't, this thing just happened. So I help lead a young adult retreat every winter called Regeneration. And it's one of the highlights of my year, and it's awesome to be a part of it and to be a part of a team that pulls this thing off. And it's supposed to be creative and different and kind of weird. And we had our plan, and the theme was revival, and we had great speakers and worship leader, and God was praised and did amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
But I got this on Saturday night, so it's a weekend thing, and ends with like a worship service on Sunday. This kid comes up to me. He's like, God told me that I need to end this retreat by praying on the mic, on the stage.
Oh, wow.
Whatever. He's like, what do you think? And I was like, well, that's awesome that you want to pray. I'm trying to affirm the good.
That's good, yes.
That's all good. That's cool. God's speaking to you. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But why? Why do you want to do it?
Yeah.
And he had that look in his eye that I had when I was his age, was like, if I can just get on that stage,
let me at him.
I could be extraordinary. I could do amazing things,
mm-hmm.
which is like, no, actually you haven't, this is talking to me now. You haven't put in any work. Your faith is very small. Your capacity is very small. Your abilities are very small.
Mm-hmm.
You actually can't do anything extraordinary on your own.
Yeah.
You're not going to impress anyone with your prayers or your songs or your whatever. And so when I started to think, okay, well, how could I fail smaller? Then we started at my church, we started doing like a beginner's praise band,
mm-hmm.
And they wanted to be on the stage too on Sunday, just like I did. But then I was like, no, you're only going to lead Sunday school songs, like silly songs, and you're going to lead Happy Birthday every week or whatever. And it doesn't matter if you fail, because you're leading children and they're very forgiving, whatever. So where is and that's where they're most useful. Anyway, all I have to say is like figuring out places. Sorry, I'm just looking back now. Another theme is in my life is almost micro expressions,
mm-hmm.
like what is a small thing that you can do well, and what's a small thing that can be useful, and then seeing where that goes. And that's an important thing, because we should all be idealistic and dream big and stuff, but if we can't act in small ways, and if we can't be micro focused, then
mm-hmm.
it's like we are just kind of saying we just want to be extraordinary for ourselves,
right?
And that's no good either. I'm sorry, Audrey, I totally lost the thread.
Well, what I heard you saying the most was kind of find somewhere where your creative outlet or your passion could be utilized in doing something with it.
Right. Sure. Yes, that's...
But I don't know where you're going with that thread.
Yeah. So you can... I also want to say this. With creative endeavors, there are some things... God is so micro in our lives, too. It's totally macro. He's in control or whatever. But he really loves little bits of faithfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And he loves things that are just you and him, that don't go anywhere,
mm-hmm.
that are just him and you. For example, in the songwriting thing, there are songs that the world's never going to hear, because that's just for me and God. And then there are songs where it's like, I don't know if this is good. I don't know if this is helpful to anyone. I don't know if this would be something people would even want to claim or sing together.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll try it in a small group of people, and we'll see.
Yeah.
And some of those have been terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those have been actually effective. I wrote a song called I Choose Life, which people still sing. And then, I wrote it in my bedroom in that period when I was a secretary in the legal department. And I was like, this is never going to go anywhere. And then we had a meeting where it's like, this is the theme. I'm like, oh, I have this song actually. Let's try this. And we looked at each other and they were like, where did this come from? And it has been effective, which is really cool. So some of these things go places and some of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost doesn't really matter, in the sense like God can be glorified in the thing that's just not extraordinary, if that makes sense. That's part of my journey, is fighting this tension, doing a big thing or doing a small thing.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it goes somewhere, maybe it doesn't. And being okay with failure, or being okay with things that are not effective, or being okay with just whatever little thing that you have, and maybe God will use it, maybe you won't. And it's almost like doesn't matter as long as your heart is right and you're willing to let go of a thing.
It sounds like just being a good steward of what you have and what you're cultivating.
Sure. Yeah. And also what I'd say to the listeners at home, no one really knows the majority of things. I don't know when this will air, but we're in a pandemic right now. 2 weeks ago, things looked really different. Mm-hmm. And now the whole world is different. And our routines are different. And our behaviors are different. And it's a terrible thing. It's a tragic thing. But it's also kind of an amazing grace that now we can see what matters. Mm-hmm. And 9/11 was one of those moments in my life too, where you pull back the curtain, you're like, we think these leaders are so good or so smart. We think that America is so strong or so right or so righteous or so whatever. We think manifest destiny is so sacred and the American dream is so sacred, and then something terrible happens and it's a tragedy, but yet we're learning, wait, what are we here for? What is the point of this? And what things do really matter? And that's can be a really traumatic growth, basically, you know, like, and that's good to know. Now I'm thinking just differently. Like, my job is less important in a sense. I want my job. Like, please don't fire me. I really need this job. But my own calling and journey and the whole reason I'm here on earth, I've been reminded of that, and the things that matter and the things that are real. It's like, all right, this is something we still need to fight for. This is something we still need to build. These are truths we still need to tell people and remind people. But I'm not so worried about this meeting or this thing, you know. Oh, here's the thing I want to say to people, leaders and stuff. There's a really awesome leader. His name's John Kim, and he's like just a great. Has he been on?
No, he's on my list.
Okay, he'd be really good. John's really wise. He doesn't ramble like I do, but he was preaching at a young adult conference, and he said this amazing thing. He said, when I die, I can picture the chapel at my funeral.
Oh, wow.
And I can picture that it will be full and that people will miss me and that they will say, John is a good guy.
Yeah.
But I can't picture who's carrying my casket. I don't know who those people are. I love people and I know I'm loved. But who are those people that are really close to me? And it's such a brutal thing to say and to think. And so like this is John Kim. Like, everyone loves John. Of course they'll have people carrying his casket, and he will, definitely. Yeah. But just like tearing back, like even just a life full of meaning and saying, who's my home team? Who are the people that I'm closest to? Who are the people that I love the most and are loved by the most? And where are those relationships that matter the most in my life? And I have those people. And sometimes I let those relationships wander, and I'm not as intentional as I should be. And I wait for them to make the call, right, or whatever. And that's something that every leader, every person, you need to foster and nurture those relationships and really love people well. And that's something that I know I'm checking in with people now, and that's good. And who are the people that you are concerned about, and then tell them that you love them and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, this is another ramble. I'm like in a really fragile state because of this thing, honestly.
Corona times are crazy times.
They're crazy times. I've been just worrying and stuff. Here's another story. We're not a prepared family normally for things. We just kind of bumble. Unfortunately, I went to bed on last Wednesday, and I'm like, we don't have anything. Like, we don't have food, and we don't have like non-perishable stuff to sustain us if it's going to be crazy. And I went to Costco on Thursday morning, and then it was just like only fear. Like in that place, like people going crazy for toilet
like
paper.
Fighting each other for the water.
For water, yes. And it was like, this is so scary. And it definitely rocked me. And I just took the rest of the day off work because I'm like, I think I had a panic attack or something, or an anxiety spike or something. I'm like, this is weird. I feel so weird. And then now it's just like, oh, what should we do? Hoard? Should we be like the pendulum the other way? I don't know. It's so crazy. Please help me, listeners. What do we do now? It's so crazy.
Thank you so much for joining us each week to listen to some of our awesome guests as they come and they chat about their story and their passions and how their passions have evolved and grown throughout their story. I am so humbled and honored that you would choose to download and listen to these conversations every other week through inviting me into your earbuds, your car, your Google Home, or wherever you listen to the podcast. Thank you so much, friend. I am so grateful for you. Can you guys do me a huge favor? If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, would you do that in whichever podcast player or app that you're using to listen to us today? If you are subscribed already, thank you so much, friend. I truly appreciate it. It makes a huge difference. And I would love it if you would share this show with a friend. I find out about so many shows through recommendations through friends. Maybe some of you listening today have found this show through a friend sharing the show with you. Lastly, would you please leave a rating or review on whichever player or app that you're listening to on? Thank you. I know that these things may seem small, subscribing, sharing, and leaving a rating and review, but they make a huge difference in new listeners finding the No Wrong Turns pod. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here and for listening and for cheering on the No Wrong Turns pod. Thank you for subscribing, sharing, and reviewing the show. I'm going to shift a little bit.
Sure.
And to our last question. And this is a question that I ask all of the podcast guests. And this also could be a little bit different during these Corona times,
Sure.
kind of an answer. But it's what's fueling your passion today. So this could be anything from a new coffee drink to a new delicacy you discovered at Costco.
A new delicacy.
A new way you learned how to store some toilet paper, hand
Sure.
sanitizer, or a new TV show. So what's fueling your passion today? What's fueling you?
Yeah, so I have to do something with my hands. That's like, I'm an Enneagram 3, so
Is that the helper?
No, it's the achiever. A good day for me is crossing some stuff off a list, and not just emails or something, but like a tangible thing. And that's when God speaks to me the most too, is when I'm doing something with my hands. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be something extraordinary or anything. So if I can do something with my hands, like stuff around the house, this is so stupid, but we have this puppy and we have a fenced yard, but he got out immediately.
Oh my gosh.
And this really cranky lady saved him and called me, and she's like, I've got your dog, whatever. So I put a little gate around the perimeter of the house, and this is so stupid. He's definitely trapped in here now, which is good. He's definitely going to be our prisoner. But just doing that as like some level of pride, and I did something real. So like for me, what always fuels me is something tangible, something, and somewhere in the house is nice, but a project. I have to have a project to keep going. But that's one. I love, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been, not for me personally to do, but I've been really into stand-up comedy, and I love watching comedians and specials or whatever. I love my guy's Norm Macdonald, and he's definitely going to get canceled. So I know this is going to be a mark against me, but he is definitely asking for it. He should be canceled probably by the culture because he's going to say some stupid things. But I think he's really clever and smart and whatever. I love Dave Chappelle. I think he's so funny. And clever. And what I love about the way that both these guys do comedies, they touch things about humanity that are so real, and then they cause you to think about it as well. And it's really funny what they're doing. They're expert comedians. So if I can watch a stand-up thing, those things fuel me. I love the dramas and stuff on TV. I'm big into shows and stuff, but Better Call Saul is back. I love that show. I'm old men like that show, and
yes, my dad likes that show as well.
Right, I'm big on the dad level of shows. I also love, it's not coming back till 2021, but I love the show Atlanta. I've just been watching that again. Just in these Corona times, I got through the 2 seasons. There's not that many episodes, but it's so brilliantly done. Their storytelling is incredible. And like from episode to episode, you would never say, if you were to like explain it to If you were to explain the show to an alien, you would never be able to say this is the same show. 2 episodes are they're never similar in what they're saying even.
Yeah.
And what they're actually exploring, I think, is really brave. So anyway, those things are fueling me. This dog is fueling me. I'm so frustrated. I'm happier having this dog, and I'm also angrier, which is a weird mix because I get real angry at this thing. But I do love it. I was just laying in bed last night. I'm like, I can't believe we have a dog. That's so crazy. I love this stupid thing. It's fueling me. My family, Corona times are crazy, but it's awesome and hard. But like, it's awesome like having all this time with my family and being there for one another. So all that's good.
Awesome.
My band is doing good too.
Oh, your band,
the singing company. We're trying to do a thing. We're trying to stream some worship stuff coming up. Yeah, hopefully it'll encourage some people. Yeah. So I'm excited about that. That's always a spark each week, getting to that practice. We practice every Monday. We're out once a month, but that's always awesome. And it's just a great group of young people it's definitely a family to be around these guys, and a privilege to travel and play and encourage people through worship. It's really good. When I started all this stuff, I would have never thought we would have gotten here.
Yeah, because it's been around since I was in high school.
15 years, which is like 50 years in band years.
It makes me feel very old, actually, personally.
Yeah.
I've got the first CD.
There you go. Yeah, and I'm definitely old. That's another weird thing, is there's a shelf life for that, I guess. I don't know. But there kind of is.
I guess so. Maybe you'll have to just dye your hair, you know?
Yeah. It's like no one's telling Michael W. Smith to stop. I mean, he's not like my model or anything. I mean, God bless him. He's written some good songs, I guess, but I don't know. It's just funny. People kind of have culturally, like in our culture, you could be in a brass band till you're 90 years old. And that's actually awesome. You can sing in a choir till you're 90 years old. You can still do it physically.
Yeah.
But praise bands, I feel like in our culture, we kind of think, no, you can't do this forever. That's that's a young man's game.
Yeah. Once you hit probably like 39, I don't know,
39,
41.
Next year. Should be retiring, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know what you go on to next, but time will tell.
Time will tell. Definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Eric, for your time and just sharing your story and your passions with us today.
Thank you. Yeah.
Friends, I have loved our conversation with Eric. It was so awesome to hear Eric's story. It's so great. I love that in this episode, Eric spent a lot of time unpacking the why or the motives behind passions. Especially when Eric talked about how he was in a job that he was not really enjoying or feeling really fulfilled in, and how he found the importance of pouring into his passions and following those, even if at the end of the day there wasn't necessarily a paycheck. How it was important to honor his passions and give them space to grow. I loved how Eric talked about tendencies for recognition and wanting, a stage, look at me moment. How he highlighted this great idea of figuring out where you can be helpful with your passion. For Eric, he chatted about leading a beginner praise band and using his passion to lead with singing and playing guitar for Happy Birthday song each week during his Sunday school opening. There were several quotes that Eric spoke that have really resonated with me. Right now, the one that I'm mulling over is when he said, "When we get to heaven, I want God to know what I did with the 10% he gave me. I hope that I honored that." This idea that God has given us so many gifts and passions in different measures, and what can I do to honor what God has given me? So my question for you today, friend, is what can you do with the gifts and passions that God has given you? I hope that we are all encouraged today through Eric's story and his passions. My prayer is that you consider what God has for you and what he might be leading you to. Our episode was edited by Sophia Bote, social media managed by Olivia Bote, and you can see our show notes for the music credits. All right, guys, enjoy your week. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. And I will see you next time back over here for our conversation with Kayla Yim. She is a self-described lover of Jesus and others and a passionate communicator of God's word. Hey friends, you have just listened to the No Wrong Turns pod with Audrey Hickman Hunter. I am Audrey and I am your host, and I am so happy that you are here. If you like what you were listening to today, make sure that you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are bringing you new shows every other Tuesday and have awesome guests on the podcast that come and chat about their story and their passions and how their passions have grown throughout their story. Subscribe today to the No Wrong Turns pod with Audrey Hickman Hunter on your podcast player or app so that you guys will never miss an episode. See you next time.